Hey, what's going on? You know who it is. You know what it is. All right, you guys, peep game. Um, at the end of the day, man, if you really look at the joke that the WBC is, or the joke that the WBC has became, you just like, wow. Because over the last year or so, they have completely contradicted themselves on a regular basis. They are tied to some underhanded stuff a little bit. From basically, you found out why they were so keen on supporting Tyson Fury over Deontay Wilder. Because the gloves that Tyson Fury used to basically cheat against Deontay Wilder was basically gloves that the WBC has sort of like a sponsorship, partnership, whatever you want to call it. Then you look at the situation with the franchise championship. They tell Jamal Charlo that the franchise championship isn't a real belt and he can't fight for it. But then they turn around and tell Teofimo Lopez that if he beats Lomachenko, he is the franchise champion. So basically, you know, in a nutshell, I'm basically saying that they changing the narratives for the brothers and protecting the others. They ain't even got that much love for other Latino fighters. Like, you know, like if you ain't Mexican, then you know what I'm saying, it ain't all good. And we already know the WBC is based out of Mexico. That's supposed to be the most prestigious belt out of all of them. But the WBC has a history of jerking people around. Don't you remember what they did to Sergio Martinez when Sergio Martinez was the middleweight champion, when he was the WBC champion? What they did was they stripped Sergio Martinez because he was supposed to fight Sebastian Beck or Zibic, whatever you want to call him. He was supposed to be the mandatory #1 contender. But HBO didn't want to pay for the fight. They felt like Sebastian Zibic didn't deserve to be on HBO. They wanted him to fight this other dude. I forgot what his name was. But nevertheless, they stripped Sergio Martinez of the belt. And then they had a eliminator bout between Sebastian Zibic and Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. And Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. ended up beating Sebastian Zibic in a fight that a lot of people thought that he lost. I mean, he got punched in his face like pretty much from beginning to end. But nevertheless, Junior ended up winning the fight. And keep in mind, for a while, they had Bob Arum in the WBC. They were jerking Sergio Martinez around. They had finally took a vote on it. And then they decided to order Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. versus Sergio Martinez. And they basically tried to, they basically was ducking and dodging. And the WBC was in on it. But they basically tried to screw Sergio Martinez by just saying, oh, okay, well, both of these dudes get a mandatory, and then if they win, then they'll fight. But to make a long story short, they finally got the fight did. Bob Arum just went through and made the fight. We all know, except for that 12th round, Sergio Martinez dominated Julio Cesar Chavez. I mean, beat the brakes off of him, except for the last round. But they just got a history of doing that. But Sergio Martinez is from Argentina. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr. is, of Mexican descent. So, of course, they're going to look out for their own. And it's the same thing that they've been doing with Canelo. Hey, Canelo, a franchise champion. So, he wouldn't have to fight Jamal Charlo. And gave him the regular belt, and they still don't want to make that fight. But then you have Canelo, who's allowed to bounce from basically, you know, weight class to weight class, depending on how he manipulates the weight. You know, because he gets to make up his own weight for the most part. So they got a history of doing this stuff. And like I said, now they may be possibly coming up with a super heavyweight title. So that's pretty much another weight class. Now, here's what they may also try to do. They may try to throw one brother a bone. Then again, he been such he been on that shit. You know, he been buck dancing a lot. You know, Mike Tyson. So could the overall plan be is basically to come up with the super heavyweight belt and let Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua duke it out for that belt? But then they asked Tyson Fury to give up the heavyweight WBC belt. And then they try to push Deontay Wilder to the side. And then let's say Mike Tyson is successful against Roy Jones Jr. And then by some miraculous miracle, they find a way to give Mike Tyson a title shot at 54. And then they try to make basically Mike Tyson the oldest person in boxing history to win a heavyweight title. Because right about now, I wouldn't put anything past the WBC. They look real cartoonish right now. And plus, they don't like Deontay Wilder because they don't like how Deontay Wilder, or should I say they don't like certain people in the media, how basically they expose Tyson Fury for his cheating ways. We all know Tyson Fury cheated. It's undeniable proof. But at the end of the day, his fans don't care. They try to come up with every excuse in the book to justify Tyson Fury's actions, from, you know, bucket with his gloves to basically saying the N-word and all that kind of stuff. So they always try to protect it. And then try to call black people racist for calling him racist. Man, like I said, at the end of the day, you white motherfuckers and non-black motherfuckers shouldn't be saying that word. And that's just the end of the story. You don't get to come on my channel and tell me or get to define your white version of racism. Real talk. But at the end of the day, the WBC, they just on that BS. They not even trying to deny and hide the fact what they're doing. That they're looking out for their own. With the exception of Lomachenko. And, you know, Bob Arum has a lot of, pull with the WBC. You know, Bob Arum been doing this shit for almost 50 years. 40 plus years. You know Bob Arum can call in a favor. So cut the shit. For real, man. Cut the shit, man. But nevertheless, that's all I got to say about that, man. It's your boy Town Biz. I am out.